why is this happening to me? Why did it happen to somebody else? You know, I mean, in the moment of truth, you know, I imagine if you're like in Vietnam jungle and you're behind a log and all these bullets are picando all around you, you know, saying, you know, why is this happening to me? You know, how did I get here? Why am I even here? Why can't I be back home in my mother's house? You're an activist, you're a young idealist, you're doing this, you're doing that, and all of a sudden, in a moment of truth, bam, and it's you that they want. So you turn on the TV and they're saying, Carlos Alberto Torres is wanted by the FBI, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I mean, you're a committed revolutionary, you're a committed person, but there are those moments that all of a sudden you say, damn, I wish I could turn the clock back just for a minute so I could be back home and not be somebody who's on the 10 most wanted list. And those ideas flash through your mind. I mean, there's a lot of things that flash through your mind only because we're human beings, you know, because we are human beings, and we do feel fear. And the difference is, of course, the most profound point is what you did with that fear. I mean, were you able to overcome it? You know, if you would have asked me, hey Carlos, do you want to be on the 10 most wanted list, facing 78 years? And that's not exciting. You know, that's a horrible thing to have fall on top of you. I mean, that's the leverage that the government uses to make sure that half the Puerto Rican nation or the full Puerto Rican nation doesn't rise up every day and demand Puerto Rican independence. That leverage, you know, and it has a psychological component to it. So I was on the run, I was living in New York, and sometimes, you know, whatever, you're like in pause, you know, and you're thinking, you know, my God, man, you know, I can't see my family, I can't see my father, I can't see my mother, I can't see my sisters, I can't see all the people I grew up with, I can't share in the Christmas party, you know. But maybe those are like woe is me moments that we may feel, but the point is that we face it, we address it, and we move on, you know, and we didn't give up. You know, we continued struggling, and we knew that at that point that was our role. But the fact that you know that it is your role does not immune you from sometimes feeling like that, like, oh my God, you know, look what I'm facing. And when we, you know, the longer I was underground, the more I could deal with that situation. I was with my wife and with my daughter, and we were living a double life. You know, when you're underground, you're lying to everybody. You know, and I hated doing that because I don't like to lie to people. I like to, you know, so you might lie to your neighbor who might be a nice little old lady who always is there to say, can I help you with something? And you have to lie to her because you can't tell her that your name is Carlos Alberto Torres. You know, you're telling her, my name is John Doe, or whatever name you happen to be. And so you're always in that constant lying to people about your back. You know, you don't have a job, so but you might have to get that apartment. You have to say, oh, I work in the Chase Manhattan Bank, or whatever bank existed back then. So, it is a reality, and there is that moment that you must decide, what am I going to do? And even though those ideas cross your mind, the point is the victory for us, as I guess it shows, you know, you demonstrated character. I mean, it shows that you're a person de fundamento, you know, of deep feeling, or what, you know, that these aren't just passing faddish ideas, but that this is something that you really do believe in, and that they are so much a part of your system of belief that you are willing to overcome that fear and that selfishness of saying, why me? Why not him? And say, hey, this is the choice I've made, and it carries consequences to me personally, and I'm willing to face those consequences. And you know, as time goes on, you grow as a person, and it becomes easier until there comes a point where it's not even a question. You know what I mean? You just don't even think in those terms. But But I don't deny that in the very beginning there were those moments, you know, because who's used to living underground? Who's used to living a double life? Who's used to? Those are things we have to get used to. You know, you make rational, unemotional decisions, and then you have to kind of, you know, you sew the shirt, then you got to fit into the shirt, you know, and so we made those decisions, and eventually, you know, they weren't an issue for me. But the maybe a tangential point to that is, and this I talk about in the conversatorios that I've done. It's once you're in prison, facing 78 years, then it's you who has to say, all right, Carlos, what are you going to do with your time? What are you going to do with your life? You're still a member of the independence movement, so you know you want to contribute to the independence movement. And I realized that, you know, I was in prison, but I wasn't immune from having to answer the questions that everybody asks themselves every day. Okay, what do I do with the rest of my life? How do I make my life, even though I'm in prison, how do I make it valuable? How do I convert a defeat, you know, let's say a political defeat, which was we were captured, we were thrown in jail. How do I convert that into a personal and political win? So I involved myself with teaching, with literacy, you know, as all people, you know, I was looking to give continued meaning to my life, and hope that being in jail didn't limit me from doing that. And I'm very proud of all the things that I was able to accomplish in prison. And in point of fact, you know, it was in prison that I learned to do pottery. Today I'm a ceramist. I got my studio in Puerto Rico. I produce pottery. I sell pottery. This is something that I discovered while I was in prison, and I doubt that I ever would have discovered it any other way. I don't know. I mean, you know, at least the way my life is going. But those are real personal things that people deal with. I mean, you know, it's people do not live storybook lives. They don't live lives that you read in narratives and in books. You know, people, you know, we're all complex, you know, human beings, you know, and we all have issues, and we all deal with the day-to-day and the human relations. So, you know, those are things that you deal with, and you kind of don't put it out there because it is a personal struggle, you know, and that's part of life, and most people, you know, they're not interested in that, and you know, they want to know about the Carlos the Revolutionary, or the guy who was on the run, or the guy who went in prison. Tell us about your prison experiences. You know? And that's absolutely okay. I'm just saying that the fact that you don't hear the other narratives doesn't mean that they don't exist. You know, we're still human beings. You know, so 27 years old, I was relatively a young man. Plenty of guys that were way older than me, and so as I got older, right, I'm dealing with younger and younger guys, and until the day I left prison, you know, there were guys that were 19 years old coming. You know, I'm an old, you know, guy already. Did 30 years in prison. I'm walking out of prison, and when I come out, we went to a community center, and I was able to see a different kind of youth and talk to a different kind of youth, and I was just so impressed how smart they were, and how knowledgeable, and how committed they were. And then I went to Puerto Rico, and we had this activity in the plaza of Rio Piedras, and the people who were in charge of security were with young university students who had just been part of that the takeover in the prison, the strike in the university, and I started talking to all those people, and I was just like, man, you know, I wish I would have been like them when I was 17. I mean, that was a sensation I had. I was so proud of them. They were so smart. I mean, literally, they were just so smart, and the fact that they could talk to me on a do basis, and they were knowledgeable, they were committed. Yeah. Every generation, you know, invents their own struggle. And we invented our own struggle, or rather that struggle that happened, that was generated from us. And I used to tell them, man, I mean, if we were where you guys are right now, you know, we would have been way much further. You know, I said, you guys are way much better than we are. You know, the world had changed, and there were many things that we had fought for were now like ordinary, mundane things, which is the way it's supposed to be. You know, it's supposed to be like that. We're not even, we're supposed to live in a world we don't have to worry about stuff like that. If you see a gay couple, you know, should they be afraid? We should live in a world where that should not even impact us, you know, whether it's 2 men, 2 women, a man or a woman, whatever it is, you know. So I felt that there were some things that we had fought for, or some things that maybe we hadn't fought for, and that wasn't part of our agenda. Maybe it was things we had issues with, because I was homophobic, you know, before, and I mean, I was you know, grew up in a Puerto Rican home with Puerto Rican, typical old-fashioned Puerto Rican culture, so that was something that as an adult I dealt with. You know, I had to say, you know, wait a minute, you know, as people struggle with the idea, and it was one of the things that I really, really internalized, and I learned it in prison. When I came out, so we go to Chicago, and we're in this community center, and we're having this big rally, and there was a student there. It was a young woman, maybe 19 years old, whatever, and you know, I kept seeing her, right? Like I would turn around and she would look at me like really sweet, and just kind of smile, right? But she had like little spiky hair, a little metal on her face, because that was the other thing when I met the students. When I first get off the van to greet the students at this rally we had in some parking lot, you know, all the young people have metal studs all over their face. And, you know, I hadn't seen that, right? Because that's not permitted in prison. So I actually may have met people who had metal, but had to take it off when they got in prison. So I said, wow, you guys got a lot of metal on your face, you know. So, and it was cool. So I'm seeing this girl, and I'm like, I mean, if you look at the videos, you see it was just crowds and people. But every time I would turn around, and she was there, and she would just kind of just smile real sweetly and all that. So throughout the whole activity, and it was kind of weird, you know, I just said, well, maybe she's just, really what I thought is maybe she's just kind of maybe a little struck that it's me, and she's just kind of hanging out. Maybe she wants to talk, but she's embarrassed to talk. But I dreamt about it that night, because when I'm dreaming, it's the first night of freedom. I go to sleep, and I get these images of this girl whose face just kind of bounces, you know, in front of me, and she's just kind of smiling at me. So the next day, we're on our way to Puerto Rico. We're getting ready to go to Puerto Rico, and we're on the plane. You know? I mentioned it to somebody. I said, you know, there was this girl. Who is she? I said, I dreamt about her last night. I never really got to talk with her. Every time I would look at her, she'd just look at me sweetly and smile. And they said, what's she look like? And I said, what's she had? You know, like spiky and everything. Oh, that was your bodyguard.